The zone tool here, first and foremost, is going to be a primary annotation documentation tool that we use. Now, the zone tool serves multiple functions, and there are a few key features of the zone tool. So first and foremost, it gives us the room name on the floor plan. If I look at the zone tool settings here really quickly, the room name is illustrated here. In the favorites, there should be 2 or 3 zone favorites depending on which version of the template you're using. We do have a room name and room number. That's not a graphic that we often use. It's actually not part of our graphic standards, but some jurisdictions or projects have special exemptions. The typical is just the room name. We want to make sure that it's on the zone layer and that it's classified as a space. Once it's classified as a space, we're going to see all of these finish schedule options pop up so we can actually populate our finish schedule. So that's the second function of the zone tool, is to build up a room schedule or a zone schedule. We're going to call this, for example, laundry or whatever the zone needs to be called. Now the zone construction method here, there are 4 construction methods. One is just a basic polygon, one is a rectangle, or a rotated rectangle, and then the other 2 are associated to what's called zone boundaries. Now, zone boundaries can be walls, they can be beams, or they can be any polyline or line tool. There's an option in here for this to be a zone boundary. I will say this about the zone tool though, is that using a zone boundary is almost more tedious to maintain than just using a manually updated zone. So typically what we want to see is that zone drawn in from face of finish to face of finish across the room. That's going to then associate doors and windows with that zone. You know what, I don't think I placed the stamp here. Let's go ahead and try that again. There, and then place the room name. And there's the zone. The zone name is currently being hidden by the model view option. There's a show zone stamp option right here. The reason for that, oh, it does look like I put 2 of them in there. The reason for that to be hideable is because we oftentimes will want to use a label so that our reflected ceiling plans can show that zone in a different location. If I look at my label tool here, I am going to see a zone stamp room name only option. There are additional ones for ceiling height and things like that that we can add to this zone stamp for the reflected ceiling plan. If I tab through until I highlight the zone, then I can, let's say show layer, have a zone stamp that matches, it could match I guess if it was the same font style, matches the zone itself. So that allows me in the floor plan to have the zone stamp here, maybe in the center of the room, wherever it needs to be, and then the reflected ceiling plan, using that layer, can show it here. So we can hide the reflected ceiling plan zone stamp by layer combination. We can hide the floor plan zone stamp by model view options. So that's one function of the zone stamp, is to just give the room name on the floor plan, the reflected ceiling plan. Additionally, it gives the name for the interior elevations. So if we look at the interior elevation marker here, there's auto text for zone name and orientation. That's pulling directly from the name of the zone that that interior elevation is occupying. It's really critical for the purposes of modeling these zones that they abut the face of finish and they do not extend into the wall. If I look here at, let's call this kitchen. Right, so now I have 2 zones, and in fact, just for ease of viewing that, let's go ahead and turn that on and then get rid of that. Now, if I look at this interior elevation, I can see that laundry north, laundry east, laundry south, laundry west. On the interior elevation marker settings, those are tied to the project location. So if I change, oh, I have to reserve. If I change the project north, if I were online and change the project north, then these would reflect that orientation as well. If this zone here, for example, extends into that space, if it overlaps that space, it's possible that this interior elevation will no longer reflect that zone name. It's a little bit kind of haphazard whether that works or not, but it is really important to ensure that those things are clean, that these zones A, don't overlap, and B, are abutting the face of finish. The reason that it's really critical that they abut the face of finish is because we may have a case where a window, for example, let's just go ahead and dump in a window from the favorites here. We'll use a casement window. Say OK. The window is actually related to the wall. The zone is scheduling from the wall. It's scheduling the wall openings. If I look at my schedules now and go to my window schedule, down here under W window schedule, I should see W03 showing in the laundry room. And that's because that window is associated to that wall that's being scheduled via the association to the zone. So that's function number 3 of the zones. There are other options now in ArchiCAD for these zones to show in section elevation. We're going to talk about section elevation graphics here in a little bit. The other thing about the zone is that there's this feature that allows you to auto annotate. So you can auto place a label. You can associate that label to be this zone stamp favorite. And that's kind of a neat new feature that allows us to essentially have that duplicated label. So I can place that, that zone stamp here, and it's going to automatically add that label as part of that as well. That label automatically shows on that RCP layer. So this allows us to show the zone. Basically, again, for RCPs, we could show the zone in the floor plan, so everything's associated with the zone. We can show the zone name maybe off to the side where it's out of the way, because oftentimes our floor plan will show this zone stamp in the middle of the room, and that's often a prime location for light fixture location. So this gives us flexibility to have multiple locations for zone stamps by hiding the zone stamp per model view option.